So people see some of these numbers, like the F-35 fighter, for example, costs $100 million or so to build one of those. And at the same time, they see we're peeling away after-school programs. We're hitting public schools. I know some of that money is being diverted into charter schools, into school choice. But do you see why people would be upset by that? Do we need another F-35 and not have after-school programs?
Don't get me wrong. There's waste in the Defense Department as well. The president's upset about that and has tasked General Mattis to work on efficiencies in the Defense Department. But when you start looking at the places that will reduce spending, one of the questions we asked was, can we really continue to ask a coal miner in West Virginia or a single mom in Detroit to pay for these programs? The answer was no. We can ask them to pay for defense, and we will, but we can't ask them to continue to pay for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
My initial response was that I felt kind of ill in my stomach. I think about coal miners, and I think about poor families in Detroit. And I think the reason that coal miners are poor and in rough circumstances, and the reason that families in Detroit are poor and in rough circumstances, is not because they are paying for public broadcasting. That's a horrible logical connection. There are so many other factors, and the arts and music and literature are powerful for people of all ages and all incomes to be touched, to be inspired, to share our creativity. It's not necessarily a luxury, although it can seem like it is. And while we are giving massive tax breaks to the wealthiest Americans and spending so much on our military buildup that could be prevented with peace building efforts, to lay the blame for poverty on PBS or after school programs or Meals on Wheels, which just got cut, to say that these are the things that keep us in poverty, and to say that with a straight face and make that argument, that's part of where my upset stomach comes from, that we're so far from being on the same page about addressing what needs to be addressed for our health, human and otherwise. My core needs around this seem to be effectiveness, as in for survival, for efficiency, for sustainability, as well as trust seems so far away, shared reality, cooperation. I think his needs are for consistency, to be seen for particular intentions. He may also be very interested in choice in terms of wanting people to not be forced to pay for things that he considers optional. He may also have a need for shared reality, although I'm not a big fan of his strategy for trust and understanding. It still hurts though. And I think my pain is as much about the quality of the conversation, about how far apart his stated perspective on the situation is from other stated perspectives on the situation, and how internally consistent they might seem, but how distant they are from each other. It just inspires me with this feeling of hatefulness. It's like people trying to strategically position themselves to overrule each other's reality and perspectives. And I don't want to live in that world. A sense of despair, and for cooperation and for progress and for, I guess, shared reality, shared sanity, health. Cookie Monster. I have 2 words for you, Cookie Monster.
28% that comes out of the State Department. I know that you're leaving a lot of discretion to the people who are in charge there, but how much is intended to come out of the foreign aid budget of that $10 billion?
A lot of it. Keep in mind, as I've said before, one of the reasons that you've seen such a dramatic reduction in the State Department on a percentage basis is not that this president thinks that diplomacy is not important. In fact, nothing could be further from the truth. We've already seen that Secretary Tillerson has had a tremendous one diplomatic success already on the deal he cut with Iraq. The president believes in diplomacy, and we believe that this budget protects that core function of the State Department. It just so happens that much of the foreign aid that the president talked about in campaign, much of the money that goes to climate research, green energy, those types of things are actually in the State Department budget. If those line items had been in the Department of Commerce, you would see Department of Commerce having gone down by by a similarly large percentage.
I really feel a little bit sort of flummoxed. Part of that, I suppose, is due to my own lack of knowledge of what budget really does target. That creates this sort of sneaking suspicion in me that I could easily be misled, and a lot of other people could easily be misled. And I'm concerned that there's this this war of ideas where there's not a lot of trust. I can just sort of stick with the ideas that I had before I saw that, which is basically there's a 37% reduction that is slated to happen to the State Department and USAID. I am skeptical about the prospect that most or all of that has to do with climate-oriented research or foreign aid. So I feel kind of confused and ungrounded. My underlying needs, I think, are for understanding, clarity, trust, shared reality, cooperation, and consistency or integrity. It's difficult. It's challenging to kind of have my head waffle back and forth. The sometimes oppositional nature of political dialogue can leave me feeling dizzy and lacking trust and lacking connection. So a request I might make of myself could be to look at the actual budget proposal and see what it eliminates. And there are entities within the State Department and USAID that I would recognize and have more clear opinions about. Yeah, that makes sense for me to do, particularly, as I'm facilitating advocacy for a lot of other people who may be relying on my information.